Welcome to this video on the Choctaw Nation Supreme Court case, Talihina Timber Management versus CNEPD, case number SC202-40812. This video will explore key legal concepts, including tribal sovereignty, environmental law, and jurisdictional doctrine, focusing on tribal, state, and federal boundaries. The core conflict in this case is a dispute over tribal environmental regulation of fee simple land. The central question is whether inherent sovereignty allows the nation to regulate environmental activities on private fee land within reservation boundaries. The parties involved are the appellant, Talihina Timber Management, a tribally chartered corporation, and the appellee, the Choctaw Nation Environmental Protection Division. The land at issue is a 400-acre, privately held fee simple tract within the Choctaw Nation's reservation boundaries, adjacent to the Kiamichi River. This area is critical due to its impact on tribal water quality. Talihina Timber commenced a large-scale clear-cutting operation without securing a tribal forest practices permit. This failure to comply led to a cease-and-desist order from the CNEPD. Talihina's challenge rested on the legal doctrine of non-Indian fee land, arguing that fee simple status limits tribal oversight. They further argued that the nation lacked authority over private holdings. The tribal court ruled for the CNEPD, affirming environmental regulation as a retained sovereign power. The court applied the Montana exceptions, asserting tribal oversight of activities threatening political integrity or welfare. The issues on appeal address two main points. First, the jurisdiction over fee simple land under the Montana Doctrine, and second, the interpretation of the Choctaw Constitution regarding regulatory power. Point of error number 1, raised by the appellant, is the claim of overextended jurisdiction and the misapplication of the Montana Doctrine. They argue the court failed to prove the logging posed a catastrophic threat to tribal integrity. The appellant's argument stresses fee simple limitations and the lack of a catastrophic threat. They also raise due process concerns regarding the expansion of jurisdiction without clear statutory bounds. Point of error number 2 alleges that the CNEPD misinterpreted Article 4 of the Choctaw Constitution, exceeding its authority. They argue this led to an unconstitutional expansion of power over private property. The appellant's case theory centers on the need for jurisdictional certainty and predictable regulation. They argue that tribal sovereignty is not limitless, and regulatory uncertainty frustrates economic viability. The respondent's case theory is based on environmental sovereignty and territorial integrity. They argue that protecting land and water is an inherent responsibility vital to the Choctaw people's health and treaty rights. The Montana framework includes two exceptions, the consensual relationship exception and the health and welfare exception. The nation seeks to regulate conduct that threatens political integrity or community welfare under the second exception. As a tribally chartered corporation, Talihina is accountable to the nation's legal system and cannot use its status to evade the laws it was chartered to uphold. Sovereignty requires that tribal entities operate within the regulatory framework. Key precedents govern non-member jurisdiction on fee land. Montana versus United States sets the baseline, while Stractive versus A-1 contractors limits tribal court jurisdiction over non-members on state highways. The case of Brendale versus Yakima Nation allows tribes to regulate non-member land use to preserve the essential character of protected reservation areas, such as the watershed in this instance. Constitutional interpretation holds that, under the 1830 Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek, the nation's territory includes all lands within reservation boundaries, regardless of fee simple status. At stake are core conflicts, including environmental survival and water quality, inherent tribal sovereignty, corporate accountability under law, and the territorial integrity guaranteed by treaty rights.